spend the money, you're going to lose. You're losing money. Okay? Like as soon as you recognize that, you're going to tap into a very powerful force called loss aversion. You will, if you want to become more bold, more confident, and take action faster, tap into your loss aversion.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast, chiropractic's #1 business podcast. I am Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And it is an awesome day to be together, Dr. Stephen. Always love our time in the studio. Like we always say right before we begin, we love to pray. And one of the things I always think about is, this is amazing that we're actually in two completely separate parts of the country. And we're able to do this, and it's awesome. And I just love the fact that you and I get to meet and hook up every week to talk through stuff and share what's on our mind and heart. And you guys are just getting the cookies that just come out of the oven. You know, it's like they're hot, and get them while they're hot before they're gone. Like that's how we feel about this. We love that we get to spend time with you each week. Thank you for tuning in. If you've been a long-time listener, we're so happy to just spend time with you each week. Thank you for including us in your journey. We're honored. We hope that we could journey with you. That's our goal. That's our intention. If you're new to listening to this podcast, hey, welcome aboard. We are very, we're very committed to this assignment, and this is year 5 for us, going into year 6 of this podcast, and so it's just an honor for us to be able to journey with you. And Dr. Stephen, I'm excited today because today's episode, you and I, we're breaking out our checkbooks, or we're considering to break out our checkbooks.
That's right.
And we'll see if it's worth stroking a check or not. But today it's all about making that decision. We're going to buying decision, kind of businesses we're going to buy. And so, Dr. Stephen, just grateful for you, grateful to be together, grateful for everybody we get to journey with.
Yeah, it's so much fun, Dr. Pete, being in this conversation around, like, we've been preparing people with programs like the Remarkable Exit Program and now the Remarkable Acquisition Program, which are, two sides of the same table, right? So somebody's selling a practice, somebody's building a practice. And, I have a lot of energy around this, right? So because so many of our clients, as their businesses are maturing, they're thinking about one of those two options, right? So it's like somebody's thinking about selling their practice and some people are thinking about buying practices. It's a really exciting time, right? So, and I want to make sure that nobody writes this off right now and just says, oh, this conversation is not for me. It's absolutely for you. And here's why, because the conversation we're going to have today will expose you and your practice, and it'll help you prioritize what things need to be done in my practice right now, today, right? So, and here's the question that we're asking. If we were to buy your practice today, what's the first thing we'd change? It's a really convicting question, right? So it's like, picture Dr. Pete and I rolling in, striking a check, and we buy your practice. We bought your practice, bought your business today. What's the first thing we'd change, right? So if you're a regular listener, if you are, awesome. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. That's awesome. You're probably immediately breaking a sweat and being like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine those guys pulling the sheets back and just being like, okay, rolling up our sleeves. It's like we're coming through like building inspectors, right? Just being like, okay, here we go. We're going to like pull your staff and put them into each one into a private room with a flashlight in their face and ask them questions about the business and their role and what do you do here and what would you change here? I mean, can you imagine that? Like, the amount there'd be so much exposure when there, right? So, and that's true for all of our businesses. We're not coming from a holier than thou perspective, right? So yeah, exactly. Literally you do that to my business right now. And I tell you right now, I would be quick to tell you what needs to change, right? So, yes. and yes. If you're paying attention as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, you should be able to come quick with those answers, right? So if not, this is for you, right? So the second part of the question is, why haven't you done it already? Like, what are you waiting for? Let's change it. Let's do it, right? So Dr. Pete, I think we've got a great framework. We're going to talk about the 5 domains of the practice. We love the accountability grid because it's always such a grounding tool, right? So we'd be able to say, okay, so wow, there's a lot going on. Yes, and it's all captured in this one infographic, right? So it's the accountability grid, and the accountability grid is the 5 domains across the top, the 3 subdomains underneath. So there's 15 primary functions of the business. Just look at that and ask yourself, man, if Dr. Pete and Dr. Steven came in and bought my business today, what's the first thing they would change in marketing, in attraction, in lead generation? What's the first thing they would change in conversion, in sales, in my sales process, in the patient's sales experience, day 1, day 2, day 3? What's the first thing they'd change? In the delivery process, right? Retention. What's the first thing that they would change? And how about team? Ooh, there's a tender spot, isn't there? Yeah, we're going to just dig right in there. There's a tender spot right there. Team. What's the first thing that they would change on my team? Is there a deficiency on my team? Are we short on manpower? Is our revenue per employee ratio off? Or is my team overwhelmed? Am I not even paying attention to that? Or I know it and I'm ignoring it? Am I tolerating B players? Maybe there's not a deficiency, but a toxicity on the team, like somebody needs to go, right? So what's the first change they would make, right? And then finally, the financials, the economics of the practice and the business, like looking at your financials and your financial plans, maybe your pricing, or maybe it's the way you're collecting money, or maybe it's the way you're managing your money. Dr. Pete, such a rich conversation. If we were to buy your business today, what's the first thing we'd change?
And I want to double click on a few things here, because it's easy for people to miss this, especially if you're just listening. So I'm gonna repeat a few things and lean into a few things as well. Number one, the question isn't what would we change? It's what's the first thing. Okay, this is a prioritization question. I just want to make sure you didn't miss that. It's easy to miss things like that. It was what's the first thing. Because you might make a list of things. You might say, actually, I have a whole list for you, Doc. Don't even have to, I'm already prepared. I'm prepared for this, for your unexpected site visit. You airdropped in, which actually, Dr. Steven, would be a cool thing for us to do a tour nationwide and just airdrop into practices, do a quick unexpected SWOT analysis through the lens of the accountability grid, and leave you with a letter in your mailbox. It'd
be terrifying.
Leave town. That'd be awesome. We maybe that's a future thing. So, but what's the first thing? Okay, it's not the only thing. But what's the first thing? What is that question asking? It's saying what's the most important thing, right? It's a question of priority. If we were to come in, we would say, you would say, oh, all right, let's go with our team. Like we've got a bunch of things where we need to change. We have one CA kind of covering both check in and check out, and but there's a reason for it. And you would have the stories and all the things to say. But guess what we would come in with? No emotion,
no story.
We come in and we're like, all right, right away. This is what we got to do. Monday, let's do it. And we would immediately do it. Okay, so what is the first thing? So that was I just wanted to make sure I circled that kind of concept for everybody, because I don't want you to leave today's call, listening to this podcast, however you consume it on YouTube or whatever. I don't want you to leave this and be like, oh, it's another cool thing and like moving on with my day. No. Here's the thing. I want you to, because you asked Dr. Steven 2 questions. It's why haven't you done it already? I'm going to ask the third one. What's your next move? Right? Like, okay, so what's the first thing we would change? Why have you not done it already? But here's the third question. What's your next move? So what are you going to do? What are you going to do about it? So, and that's why I want to make this simple. What's one thing? The first thing is also what's one thing. We're not asking you to do 5 things, 10 things, because our goal in 2025 is we're asking this question. We're saying, what would happen in 2025 when your practice doubles? Right? This is a part of our new wineskin framework, right? We're talking about when your practice doubles, what breaks? So we're saying if we bought your business today, if we were coming in and we were ready to buy, we were willing to do that, what's the first thing we would change? So what's the one thing coming out of what we're about to go through? Pick one thing. That's all I'm going to encourage you to do, is to discipline and organize your mind and say, okay, this is the one thing. This is the highest priority, because we would actually pick one thing. We would look at the 5 domains and all the 15 primary functions, and we'd still say pick one. What's the one, the most important thing? what would that be? And I want to just frame it that way. And then that's your next move. That's the next thing that you're going to do. I'm just trying to help you here to take some of this, what we're sharing, and be like, make it practical, make it immediately implementable and immediately driving better outcomes. I just want to see better outcomes for you. That's what we're attached to.
That's right.
We're simply attached to one thing, your better outcomes. So I don't want you to just listen to our podcast and be like, that was cool, I love listening to it. No. What's the better outcome that can happen because of this episode, this specific one about this, where you would wrestle with the fact that maybe we're a little bit embarrassed about, if you came in, we'd ask you to wait at the door because we have to clean up our mess because we weren't ready for guests to come for dinner tonight. Like, it's like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, we're cool. We can handle the mess on the floor. Like, we're good. We're just coming in to say, what's the one thing?
So, Dr. Pete, as promised, I'm going to take my thumb. I get this brutal thumb. My patients were always just terrified of my thumb because, part of our analysis was static palpation. And you've been in the chair when I've taken my thumb and said, this one right here, the bottom one or the top one, right? And you just take that thumb and you just go right in. Oh, L5, is that? Or how about the L4? Oh, no, it's L5. So it's this one, L5, not this one, right? S1, right? So no, it's not that. It's that one right there. Yeah, that's the one. As Gonstead used to say, like, press it once to find it, press it once to let the body know you know where it is, and press it again to let the patient know you know where it is. Right? All right. So I'm going to press in here, right? So because you said something about, like, for example, let's make it practical, looking at the front desk. Well, you have one person, one really busy, quote unquote, Swiss Army knife who's running back and forth between check-in and check-out. You might not call it that, but that's what they're doing, right? So there's two sets of responsibilities at the front desk. There's check-in responsibilities, there's check-out responsibilities, right? So I love the expression, spend the money you're going to lose. Okay. Because I know the stories everybody's telling it. Like you just said it. Yeah, you're going to have your story and blah, 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 blah. The reason that you're only have no, that's a story. Okay. And most of these stories boil down to, I don't want to spend the money, or I can't spend the money, or I can't afford it, blah, blah. I'm like, listen to this expression. Spend the money, you're going to lose. You're losing money. Okay? Like as soon as you recognize that, you're going to tap into a very powerful force called loss aversion. You will, if you want to become more bold, more confident, and take action faster, tap into your loss aversion. Because here's the truth. Let's say, for example, you have a $5,000 lifetime value, okay, of a patient conversion. Lifetime value of a patient, anybody that converts to care and says, I'm going to become your patient, their lifetime value, you've extrapolated this out, it's $5,000. Okay, so let's say you set a goal that you're going to have 20 new patient conversions every month, and you're only converting 15 new patients per month. So you're 5 conversions shy at a $5,000 lifetime value. 5 times 5 is $25,000 per month. Now, I don't know what you're paying your CAs, but I'm sure you can reconcile the $25,000 per month money that you're losing at the front desk. Franson, what are you talking about? Well, let's say check-in CA is they're in charge of your flow. So they're in charge of making sure that everything flows, which is, of course, means that everyone has to be scheduled, right? Which means that if they're missing, they're rescheduled, right? So, and that they're flowing so that they're not backed up and jacked up, so that they don't start skipping appointments because they can't trust your scheduling. So now you're losing visits. And if you have a $55 collection visit average, just start doing the math on how much money you're losing just from compliance, just from retention. So now you're losing more money at the front desk. I was just talking about new patients, because if a person's not reminded to bring somebody with them to the Better Results Faster workshop who is a new patient referral lead, and you notice you wanted 10 a month coming in leads, but you're only getting 5 a month, there's your 5. That's new patient check-in CA. All right, let's just flip over to the other side, because, well, they're busy over at the checkout CA. Well, while they're at checkout, you missed all that at check-in. Mm-hmm. Well, what if they're doing great at check-in? Well, what's going on behind them at checkout? Because at checkout, that's where we are scheduling people for the Better Results Faster workshop. That's where we're getting people rescheduled to make up their missed appointment or their missed progress exam. That's where we're scheduling their spouse to come in for their examination, or to bring that guest to the workshop, or to collect the monies that are already owed, for example, right? So guys, do you see how this math becomes incredibly practical immediately? Like immediately, Dr. Pete. The idea is spend the money you're going to lose right here. Just in this example, you get a $25,000 a month problem. Solve that problem.
So if we come in 2025, Doc, we're this question, we've asked this question maybe before, if you've listened to this podcast, and this is a great question for you to ask yourself. I'll relate it to something that I did all the time and still do this, but I remember in practice doing this. Some of my earliest coaches and mentors, we did a group orientation class, group report of findings. And I remember that the way that I would make sure that I was executing well was I would write the name of, my couple of my coaches, whatever, and I'd put it on a chair in the report room, and I would have my staff have an empty chair. But I would say, like, there's a reason why that empty chair is there. It's not because somebody didn't show. I was envisioning, like, my coach, my mentor is in the class today. He's in tonight's class, and I'm speaking, and he's sitting in that seat right now. And so if he was there and I knew he was coming in to observe, and he was there to, he's going to give me feedback. He was going to really pour into me. He was going to, and he wanted to see how things were going. I used that as a way to help hold myself accountable. Right. And you might say, well, did you ever just record it and send it to him? Oh yeah, I'd done that too. But I'm saying I would mentally put that person. It's very similar to this situation where it's like, all right, well, let's say France and I were going to stop by once a quarter, right? And we were just going to check in and say, hey, we're looking at this. What's the first thing we would change if we were going to buy it? You and your team every quarter throughout this whole year, you could have this as a leading question that just frames out how we approach our assessment, right? Using our peer process as you go through that. That's a good question to frame it with. Just as an example, it's what would they say? Not what do we say or what do you say? What would they say? It almost takes it out and gives you like a third party perspective, that outsider looking in. You want to have that. Look, that was one of the benefits that I always found as becoming the CEO was I was just slightly removed from the day-to-day operation. It gave me such another perspective. I was way better coach and guide for my team because I was just slightly removed from the day-to-day operation. I came in more objectively, and that was so powerful for everybody. So this is what we want to do, is want to give you that perspective, says an outsider looking in, a third party, unemotionally attached, but just objectively, again, dedicated to better outcomes. What would that be? And I just want you to set your year up and the rest of your career up for greater and better success, because this is a question that you'll want to continue to ask at all times, and then look at it through the lens of your attraction. Okay, look at your conversion. And then you can ask a more specific question. What's the first thing that we would change about your day one? What's the first thing that we would change about your day two? What's the first thing we would change about your day three? You feel it? That's where it starts to go layers and layers and layers and layers of depth. And we can go so many layers deep on this. And that's the way we want us. This is a CEO podcast, Dr. Stephen. This is about working on the business, right? We talk about work in the business, on the business, above the business. You're above the business right now listening. And then you're about to go work on your business as a result of listening to this podcast. That's the two activities of a CEO. Listen to a podcast and then work on your business. Like that's what you're doing right now. You're above it and then going to be on it. And then you're going to go in it and it's going to change. That's what we want to see happen for you.
Dr. Pete, you and I have shared the experience of being coaches while we were in practice.
Yeah.
And having all these doctors show up because they want to shadow you and they want to watch.
Yep.
They want to watch, right? So they're going to bring their staff. They're going to stick their staff behind your front desk. They're going to have their staff and their team and everybody's going to sit in on your team meetings, your team trainings. They're going to show up Wednesday so they can go to the better results faster. They want to hear the whole thing. They want the whole experience, right? So you got associate doctors who are interns, people that are interviewing because they want to come and work for you, right? And of course, we'd always have our coaches sit in, right? So, and we have done it ourselves where we do clinicoscopies, where we airdrop into somebody's practice and do the full audit of their business. So this can be a terrifying experience, right? So it's just like literally, like I can remember just being so nervous having somebody that's coming in is like, because the reality is we all walk with a limp. And, I was just in my C12 group this week, which is a bunch of Christian business founders and CEOs. There's 50 of us in a room. It's our annual meeting. We meet every month, but once a year we get together, everybody. And this was one of the conversations that was, this idea was stimulated from a conversation like this. It's like, Not would I be embarrassed if any of these badass business guys who are outside of chiropractic, but they know business, if they airdropped in and they took a look at my business now, the Remarkable Practice, it's not a question of would I be embarrassed of anything? It was a better question. Exactly what would I be embarrassed by? Right. So what would be the thing or things that I'd be like, man, I hope they don't discover that. I hope they don't find out that. Right. So it'd be embarrassing. What a great exercise, because I'm like, yeah, I need to fix that. That's the shit I got to fix right there. Yeah. So ask yourself right now, it's like we all walk with a limp, right? Recognizing that we would be there to serve you, right? If we were to airdrop in and say, okay, so we're going to buy this business, and what's the first thing that we're going to fix, right? What's the first thing in marketing that's going to change? No stories, no excuses, no holdups. What's the first thing we're going to change when it comes to your conversion process? What's the first thing we're going to change when it comes to your delivery and retention? What's the first thing about your team that we would change? Unapologetically, we're going to change this, this, and this, right? So, and when it comes to the collections, what's the first thing that we're going to change, right? When the economics, when it comes to how you do your care plan, maybe it's your pricing, you're charging, a collection visit average of $35, where your collection visit average should be $55. There's $20 of arbitrage in every single office visit, right? We might see 10% attrition, maybe, if we just push those prices up on Monday, right? Maybe, but do the math 3 years later. Are you kidding me? Right? So a $55 collection visit average instead of 35. And of course, we're talking about a cash-driven practice, right? So at the end of the day, Dr. Pete, it's the question we have to ask ourselves. And the reason, like you said, why aren't we taking those next steps? Why haven't we done it yet? Stop telling yourself stories, embrace the truth, embrace loss aversion, and spend the money you're going to lose.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic. And what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.